Okay, so why don't we get started? A little late. We knew a few folks were going to be gone and out for this meeting, but in fairness to those that are here, want to make sure we're as productive as can be, Superintendent. So we want to get started reasonably on time and go through the items that we need to get through. So with that, wanted to give you a little bit of an update on the town board end. As we talked a little bit about it at the last meeting, but what the town board did is we went out for request for proposal. We went out to 7 appraisers, and we got 6 appraisals back, and actually 2 of the appraisers combined and joined forces, so hence just 6 back. We reviewed that with a small internal group, and we have a resolution together for tomorrow evening that will authorize myself to sign a contract with Pogel Shubnall, who are local to Penfield. They were in fact the lowest quote. Quotes ranged from $4,000 to $8,000 to do an appraisal of the Shadow Pines property. The proposal is due back in our hands October 14th, and again, we'll be adopting this resolution tomorrow evening. So it's kind of an update from an appraisal standpoint and what's going on at the town level.
Were they able to separate the 2 parts of the property? Well, they haven't done it.
They haven't done it yet, so.
When they do it, will they?
So we've asked them, as we put the specs out, we've asked them to take a look at and hold the Clark property out, Clark House property out as a separate piece to evaluate that component, and then to go through and take a look at all the individual parcels. So I think there are 4 total for that, and then give us an overall of the property worth.
Itemized and total?
Yes. Yep. So, like I say, we'll have that by the 14th or before of October.
Will they be giving you
Thanks.
2 proposals, one based on the current zoning and another based on if it was rezoned as open space?
It'll be based on what the current zoning is, and then from there that'll give us an opportunity to go back and start any discussions or negotiations. Other questions or comments on that? Okay. All right. So that's the latest. One of the thoughts that I had, and I was talking briefly with a couple of members of our team, is that we will, as we go through that process and hear back, we certainly will give updates on the website at the Shadows page, so that we keep everyone updated on that. All right, our discussion items, we have, the draft outline that Carrie prepared for us, and so timing is everything. So thank you very much for getting that out as early as you did, and putting that out as a straw man for everybody to take a look at it. And thank you to those that responded back with your thoughts, comments, and ideas with that. So I think that's the appropriate place to start this evening, and as to next steps, where do we want to be with that path forward, all of those types of things. And Carrie, I don't know, I'm not to put you on the spot, but if there's any comments or thoughts that you wanted to offer, being the author of, would give you that opportunity if you'd like to comment in any way.
The only thing that I'll say is that the first 2 categories, I didn't put anything in there yet because I wanted to make sure that everybody thought that was appropriate. But if we feel like those 2 categories, which would be the moratorium overview and background, and then the committee charge, if those 2 categories, if the format works for everyone, I'd be happy to take a stab at putting a draft in those sections for people to respond to. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to put a lot of narrative in if it wasn't going to be useful or needed. But if we feel like those categories are helpful, then I would populate it.
Great, thank you. Staff, any comments, thoughts from your end that you'd like to offer before we?
I don't think we have any, formal update from staff. I think Zach passed out to everybody the hard copies of the 3 versions that we have back or that we're aware of. Not sure if there's other copies or comments that are floating out there around or, in lieu of those 3, but wanted to get hard copies of what we've gotten back so far. I know Zach, as late as today, was going through the survey online. I think we had 12 responses as of this afternoon on that. So that's kind of the update of what we have on our end. I think it's up to the committee as far as where we go from here and kind of fleshing out the rest of it and anything we can do to help or more information you need or stuff we can provide, we're here.
Okay. Bob?
Yes, I have a question just for background or clarification.
Did you just give that a little tap on the top? Okay, cool. Great. I want to make sure our friends downstairs are happy.
The other day, yesterday, I was up at Gentle's, and I took a walk over to the plaque and was reading that the town has that forever open space plot of land there, just to the west of Gentle's Farm Market. That was purchased, the sign says.
That is correct.
So that's different from, I guess I don't understand the difference between the town owning and having the development rights. And I see that it's being farmed, so that is the town getting income from the leasing that out as farmland?
We are.
And the fact that the town owns that, is it parkland? Is that become subject to the provisions of alienation?
If we were to do anything different with it or try to put some use in place or what have you?
But you're allowed, as parkland, to use it for income purposes.
I think what happened, by way of a little bit of history on that, the Gentles property, or the Gentles had farmed that for years and years and years, and when we bought that property, that was one of the conditions that we had, is that we could continue to farm that.
But it was owned by Dolomite, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that was one of the things that we said, because that was very important to the Gentles at the time to be able to continue to do that. And essentially there was really no break from the time, if you will, when Gentle sold, and then the new company came in and took over, and we just modified the lease arrangement with the new group.
So if Shadow Pines was parkland, you could lease out the Clark House, for instance, if that was part of the parcel.
I think what we heard from Dick Horowitz, I think if we were to look to purchase, one of the things that we'd want to do is to be specific about some of those pieces of property. And so the Clark House, because the Clark House was used in the past as a restaurant, the thing that I'd look to do is to tee that up for that type of use or some similar type of use.
Then on the other pieces of farmland where we have development rights, what happens when the farmer wants to stop farming and wants to sell the land? What really happens?
I'm going to let our ace crack staff kind of give you an update on that.
Regardless of the ownership of the property, the town has the development rights to the property. So whatever the development was permitted at the time the rates were obtained by the town, those rights are extinguished. So now the land is to be used for agricultural purposes. That would continue on.
The town could not sell that property for home development then? You could...
No, not the way it was set up, because the town took money from the Farm Bureau or whoever was the one that offered the grant. So in this case, it has to stay in the state of, in this particular case, it would be agricultural.
So it would have to stay agricultural, it couldn't revert to recreational open space?
No, it was geared, in this case, it was geared to preserving agricultural rights.
Okay.
So it has to be that case.
program to reserve
And it may stay
farmland.
fallow for several years if there's not a farmer interested in farming it, but it cannot go to other uses.
Thank you, Jim. Dr. Tom?
I easily get confused, but I'm a little bit confused. I thought we were going to go over the results of the Survey Monkey tonight and then hash it out amongst us and to get moving on this, and I'm just surprised that only 12 of 20 were able to respond to a 3-question Survey Monkey by tonight. So I guess I'm wondering whether we should go ahead with those 12 responses, find out where we are right now, and start hashing this out. But that's just a suggestion.
Makes sense.
Okay. Jim? Thank you.
Where did you find out that 12 of 22 people answered?
He just said that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, because I've been trying to keep up. I've been on vacation a lot and everything, but I'm a little confused with all the documents floating around in the Survey Monkey. I thought that's what we were going to do today also, is kind of measure what everybody's thinking, what our priorities are. And when that first survey came out, I filled it out. But then all this other stuff was floating around, so I wasn't really sure what was going on. I was kind of confused.
So I think there were two items, if you recall, from our last meeting. One, Carrie was gracious enough to take on the task of putting together a draft or format for us to work with. And then the second component was the Survey Monkey survey that went through. So I think Zach, guess, disappeared. so thank you, Tom. He saw your name tag upside down, and I think he ran for some reason.
I told you I could easily
So I'm assuming he is off to gather.
He was going to get that information, so he'll be back
Okay,
momentarily.
so we will certainly next step take a look at the results of, and yes, I think out of 22, 12 of 22
excuse me.
did respond. So,
It's 3 questions. It's not, it's not an essay contest.
yep, Carrie, and then Bob.
Is it possible, just as a gentle reminder to the folks who haven't completed it yet, maybe for, and not to do it in a public way, but maybe just for someone on staff or for Zach to sort of send individual messages to folks who haven't done it yet, just as a gentle push?
Our gentle push is we shut it down at 5 o'clock today.
Okay. Speak now or forever. I think people, it's been a busy couple weeks. This is a big vacation time. People are away. So it's possible that people missed it because of vacation and just general life.
Yep, okay. Bob?
I filled mine out today at like
I didn't
4.
miss it. I had trouble deciding or understanding what the 3 mixed-use options really were. I didn't think it was definitive. It said a mix of residential and retail, and I was questioning what kind of retail and whether residential is single-family, multiple family, multiple stories, structures. I didn't know what to do with that. So I had my first and my 7th choice, but the ones in between I just couldn't resolve. So I was asking Zach for more definition on that. So I just couldn't answer those 3 mixed-use categories. I didn't know what they meant.
Okay, all right. James?
While we're waiting
Yep.
for Zach to find the monkey there, in terms of this draft report, your question earlier about the committee charge and the background information, I think that's very important that it should be in there. I think it's extremely important that we should put it in there. And, just summarize what the town board sent us, because I'll remind everybody that at some of the town meetings, and I believe it was when the moratorium vote took place, I think the majority of the board spoke very passionately about the, I don't know if I want to call it the seriousness, but the impact this has on the town. And I thought the charge was pretty specific in what we were supposed to be considering, so I'd definitely like to see that in there.
Other comments, other thoughts? Yes, Neil?
You know, on the second part of the questionnaire, I guess the Shadow Lake portion, you know, I had a problem, we had 3 things to pick from, but quite frankly, there was only one that made sense to me, which was do nothing. But of course, it won't let you do that, because if you just put in one, it says, well, you got to pick a 2 and a 3. And I'm sure that was your problem too, Bob, because you didn't know what 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 were. So I guess, but look, I suppose we can nitpick that, or nothing's perfect. But I got to say, probably, I hope the Survey Monkey gives us some direction. I think it's probably, at least I find it probably, I think it'll be better just knowing where we're going than those, that great big chart we all struggled with for several meetings. So, hey, I guess we're all anxious to see when Zach gets back. And if it's 12 people, it's 12 people. It's too bad we don't have more participation.
Doctor?
No, I was just, if you don't stop calling me that, one of these days I'm wrong.
Better than Mrs.
It's true. All right, Doctor's good. I love it. Okay. Yeah, just to respond to Neil and Bob, I hope we made it clear last time that this was not to end a discussion, but to forward a discussion. And we can spin our wheels forever, but at some point, we're going to have to make a decision. Yeah.
Okay.
Got to fill out those bullets.
Fill out the bullets. Okay. Other questions or comments? Yes, Laura.
Just an observation. I don't know if anyone else noticed this. It just came to light for me while I was filling out the survey. And it was obviously based on a document we've been looking at for months. So maybe this is just me. But filling out the survey, it became very clear that we had 1 option for non-development and 6 options for development. And I thought, is that fair? 1 option was kind of encapsulating all of the non-developmental options, and then we had 6 options for development. So I don't know if anyone else had trouble filling out the survey because of that, but I did. It just seemed really heavily weighted in one direction.
Got it.
Am I the only one?
Can I just ask a follow-up just to understand where you're coming from? So do you want to give some examples of non-development options that you felt like, if you were crafting the survey, what
The options were right there. So it listed a few open space options, right? So park versus open natural green space. I think those are 2 completely different usages. And then the third one would be something that's in the middle, something that is natural but also has developed trails and things like that. So for me, I would have liked to at least been able to rank 2 open space usage options along with maybe 4 development type options. That may seem more fair to me than having, because if you look at then how we'll be plugging in our top 3, recommendations, 2 of those will definitely be development then. There's going to be some sort of development on the property based on the 7-1.
I'm sorry, you got the one.
No, you take the 1.
It was for a point of discussion. We may decide that open space is our number 1 and number 2 options, and this is what we want on number 1 on open space, and this is what we want on number 2.
Maybe that's, I was thinking those were going to lock us into the top 3. So we were going to say, well, we have top 3 preference.
Interpretation.
Yeah, interpretation of how the survey results will be used. So maybe we need to clarify how we will use the survey results, and that will answer my question.
Okay. So Zach is reformatting.
I believe he was pulling up the survey and just trying to put it into report format, so.
Okay. I thought, for some reason, when we spoke this afternoon, I thought we had that.
And he told me that this morning, that he would have it by this evening.
So, okay.
Must have ran into some technical issue.
That or he might have been waiting for
Yeah,
folks
I'm sure it
to,
was, yeah.
hoping that the rest of the last minute finishers like myself would get in before the wire.
Especially if, yeah, I mean, if only 10 of 22 had responded by this morning, sure, makes perfect sense.
Pass?
Just jumping back to Bob's comment, I had the opportunity to meet with the town of Webster since our last meeting. You piqued my curiosity about how to handle parkland that you are leasing out to somebody for them making a profit. And what the town of Webster does is, and this is relating to the Bayside restaurant that they own, which is on town park property, they have a license agreement. They don't have a lease, but they have a license agreement. And I believe that license agreement runs from month to month for them. But legally, if you have a license agreement with a potential lease lessor, you can do what they're doing with the property, even though they own it as parkland. So that's just a tidbit to know about.
Okay. So anybody that submitted some comments, back, so we have those in front of us. I think Zach was kind enough to provide some of the various comments and feedback and what have you. While we're waiting for Zach, might be good if you have not had a chance, just take a quick scan of those, and to see if there's anything that jumps out that either we need to talk about or need to make some adjustments to.
Yeah, I think they got some. And some key copies.
Here. Got,
Oh, thank you.
is there a set there, Don? Yeah. Here. These are the ones that came in. Thanks, Don.
Tony, how much are we tied into, so let's say we select a mixed-use option, and just for sake of an example, not the one that's probably most popular, but let's say it's senior living, but we wanted to have maybe 4 holes of golf, like the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, which would be 2 par 3s, 2 par 4s, which would be nice, and the Clark House. That would be very desirable for a senior living community to have the restaurant plus 4 holes that they could walk, because we wouldn't have cards. Would we be precluding that if we don't identify that up front, or would there be flexibility to go in that direction?
I think from the town board standpoint, we're looking for any and all, thoughts or ideas to be as flexible as we can, for use of that, property, whatever that may be, and would welcome any and all thoughts around that. So, yeah, I think we've got a situation here, with a pretty significant piece of property to do a lot of things, with that property, from purely open space, leave it as it exists today, all the way up to whatever the committee thinks may make some sense, and anything in between as we take a look at it. And I think we have the opportunity to explore just about everything and anything as we go through. And I think getting the appraisal, I think that helps certainly with the opportunity of having some more detailed conversation with the owner. And then I think as we look to potentially secure that site and then move in a direction of a referendum, I think you want to make sure, and I think I would expect that residents would want to know, what is it going to be used for? If you're asking us to spend $3 million or $3.2 million on a referendum, what is it that you got planned for that? What is it going to look like? How is it going to evolve in time, recognizing it may not happen, certainly day one, but what is the worst case scenario, or what is the ultimate plan, or what are the potential uses, and all those types of things. And I think that's going to be real key when you put a referendum together. I know that our good doctor, Dr. Putnam, whenever, he has to go out for a referendum for something, he's got to make sure that it's very defined as what it's for, how it's going to be used, how the money's going to be spent, all those type of details. That's the same thing from a town standpoint, and I would think we'd want to, as we're looking at that, make sure we understand that we don't back ourselves in a corner, with something and get into issues with alienation and, some other things like that. Mr. Zachariah,
Sorry for the technical delay.
not a problem, sir. The floor is yours.
For us. Well, of the 12 respond, I should probably use that.
Thank you.
No. Of the 12 responses, I just put all this together. Sorry for the delay. This will be a document that we'll share on Dropbox as well. This is what it looks like for the Shadow Pines responses. And I can scroll down to show the full spell out of these questions, but these are the immediate results of the 12 people that responded to it. If I need to zoom in, let me know.
Is the length of the bar determinative of how many people responded?
It's a frequency, yep. And then
Is there a quarter person? I'm looking at open space as a 5, and senior living as a 5 1/4, 5 1/3. Am I missing something there?
well, I'm not an expert in SurveyMonkey,
Okay.
but this is how colorful it gets. There is a chart below that does break down the details of the rankings that each received for each criteria. So there was, when you went through the survey, it was a ranking of 1 through 7. So that's what the bar chart's going to represent, is how many, probably the average ranking of what each response got. This chart is probably a better breakdown of how many people actually said, I like this as my first option, my second option, so on and so forth. And then at the end, you see the score.
Is that showing for for open space that 58% voted open space as a 1?
Yeah, it says
Read that correctly?
7 people of the 12 chose this as their first option, highest rank option, which made up 58% of the total responses.
So we have
Yeah,
7
but-
for open space.
Hold on, just a minute, Jim. I got Bob first, and then you need a mic. So go ahead, Bob.
It would have been helpful for me to vote for senior community if the Ray Hutch proposal was there, but the only one I saw was the Highlands, the full spectrum of senior community, and I really favor what Ray has been suggesting. Cottages or patio homes, whatever you want to call them, with recreational space and enough of them there to be a support community for the Clark House as a restaurant, and maybe a swimming pool, who knows, whatever else you might need. But I'm in favor of that as opposed to the multi-story nursing home environment, which is going to end up looking like the area up at Willow Pond and behind Wegmans. So I'm not in favor of that for that reason, but I really like what Ray's been proposing as an alternative.
You're the one that convinced me to modify my original
I know,
idea.
and I thank you for doing that.
Jim?
Yeah, let's just go through that. Zach, can you scroll? It says, of the 12 people, 7 voted for open as their first choice. Nobody for single-family detached. 1 person for single-family cluster under 278. 2 people under senior living. 0 for mixed. 2 as mixed-use residential housing types with flexible density. And 0 mixed use for residential and professional. Is that all our choices? Okay. And then go back up the top. Under open, I'm just going to, there's some 0s and 1s in the middle. I'm going to go to just the other side. What I see is open space. There were 2 people that don't want that at all. That's their last choice. There were 7 people as a last choice for development of single-family detached. And then we're 1 person, the least choice under the cluster 278. And then we have 0, 0. And what was the last one, that mixed use?
0.
Okay.
So that was just a breakdown of the first and last choices for preferences by people who responded to the survey.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe we should treat it like the Olympics, that the only thing that matters is gold, silver, and bronze, 1, 2, 3.
Well, just-
7, that shouldn't factor in there.
There are there are several responses that are captured in the 3 through 6 range as well, spread out amongst this.
Jim, and then Tom?
Oh, before Zach was...
No, Jim, then Tom. Sorry.
Excuse me, sorry.
I'm just going to go back, because I've been pretty miffed from talking to a few people after the meetings, before the meetings. I'm surprised at this. I thought it would be more, but with what Laura was saying, it seems like in all these meetings, we're acting like kids in a candy store talking about all these potential things. And the one thing that has 7 of the 12 votes right now, the 12 people that took the time, and we have no idea what the other 10 people would go for. But that is the same as what the townspeople have said in all the meetings, okay? That they would like to preserve it as open space. And I understand what Laura was saying, and I kind of read it both ways, but I agree. Of the, what have we had, 6 meetings now? Of the 12, 14 hours we've been sitting here, we've talked about, if it's been 14 hours, we've spent 11 hours talking about retirement homes and cluster housing and all this stuff. And what we really should be talking about, I mean, if we're gonna come up with what the committee votes, and if they say first choice is open space, second choice is B, and third choice, we should spend all of our time helping you and the town board on the first choice, because that's what we're asking you to do. And it's for you guys to decide. If we say rezone it, or we ask you to rezone it, because that's what was in the, that was within the committee charge. You know, the people that, I would like to hear a vote, how many people would say, let's leave Shadow Lake alone? Because the board asked us to consider Shadow Lake with Shadow Pines. So if we go with what the charge is and what the majority of people want, I think these next 1 or 2 meetings that we have, we should be spending time on prioritizing what we'd like the board to consider. And then since one of them is potentially very expensive and has legal ramifications, I think it's up to the board to get legal advice on, you know, if we come up and say rezone it, or we'd like you to rezone it, we'd like to follow the master plan. Because for a lot of us who've lived around the golf course, you know, we've come to expect certain things, and the master plan sort of promised it to us and said, this is what Penfield is doing as a town. So if so many people have talked out for that, and quite a few people on this committee would say, that's our first choice, why don't we spend a lot of time on that? I mean, I guess I'm just sort of pleading to consider that, instead of talking about, you know, all these other possible usages that aren't our first or second choice.
Okay. I've got Tom, and then I've got Don.
Yeah, I was going to say, before Zach came in, I was going to ask Tony, and if I'm out of bounds, just let me know. We heard from Mr. Horowitz that you can't do a referendum by November. When can you do a referendum by, is one, and then part 2 of the question is, since I imagine that's not going to be before the moratorium ends in March, what do you do about that, and what are the legal ramifications, and what's the chances of the Old Castle responding unhappily with this, and I mean unhappily by court proceeding?
Sure. I'll answer that the last question first, and that is, you know, you always face that you know, potential, you know, going to court and court action. From a moratorium standpoint, you know, if we're making progress and we can demonstrate that we're making progress, there is an opportunity to extend the moratorium. So you could do that for some period of time, 3, 6, you know, 9, 12 months. So you have that ability to do that. We have to go through a complete public hearing. So it's just like starting from scratch. You just can't say, okay, we want to do it, therefore it's going to be done. We've got to go back, have the public hearing, and then file the appropriate paperwork with the Secretary of State. So, we would look to do that. As far as the moratorium, when could that moratorium vote be held?
Referendum.
Excuse me, thank you. But the vote for the referendum, when that could be held, if we're looking to get the appraisal back mid-October, then there has to be some level of negotiations and agreements from there. And you've got some deadlines that you have to follow from, by way of advertising. Certainly there's an educational component that you want to go through. So I would say that at the very earliest, January or February, at the absolute earliest. So you can hone that more as we get a little closer, but to give you a general sense, that's what it would look like. Don?
Two things. One is Dick might also have a trick or two up his sleeve with entering into a memorandum of understanding with Oldcastle. So even if the moratorium was expiring, he could he could draft some document that says contingent upon the referendum.
Sure.
So, and they might be very eager for that. But my real question was, I guess I don't know how to read this SurveyMonkey results, because I would have said number 1 was senior living community that has the most points, and not the open space. Is that not true?
Depends on how you rate it.
But do you know what I mean? Like, let's do the Olympic diving scores, and it adds up. It's got the most. So how do you do that? How do you use this tool?
Well, I really think the key of this, the intent of this survey was really just to help the committee take the scenarios that we've been talking about through the first 6 meetings and just give them a ranking, as in how to order the body of the report. If you want to take it back to high school when you're learning how to write reports, what's your order going to be? We have our intro, middle, and end. This is going to help structure the middle in terms of what is talked about first, what has the highest priority, and descending after that. I think this survey is showing us that there were several responses that were of the higher number, that is, 1, 2, 3, 4, where we got responses that say, I'm not completely against this. This does rank somewhere towards the top in my responses. So if we use those numbers at the far right, that may help choose or guide us through forming that order for each scenario that's been discussed. Does it have to be by each one? That's up to the committee. Yeah, we have 5.33 as the highest number because of the number of responses that were higher in value. Does it have to be first in the report? That's not up to me or the survey. That's up to the committee to decide that through our discussions at this meeting and potentially the next, however long that takes.
Todd? Todd?
I read this report as saying 58% of the people voted open space as their top option, 41% selected mixed-use development, park, fields, lodges as their second option, and 33% for the same option. And then the fourth place would be senior living. My feelings were kind of the same around Laura's and some of what Jim said regarding that open space didn't have more of a voice on this survey. But I think it's kind of portrayed when you see it in this line versus the bar graph. And then to speak on senior living a little bit, I think that one, it's kind of tough for me from the aspect that you would need a senior living community to run with that. They would need to be the drivers to want to expand their community, similar with what Cherry Ridge did, St. Anne's did with Cherry Ridge, or Cloverwood Senior Living did with the Friendly Home. You would need one of those outfits to drive that, work with a construction company, and that takes several years. And as an observation, I back up to the fifth hole, or what used to be the fifth hole. Every morning I let my dog out, we all go outside. Every morning I hear construction, I hear trucks, I hear the reverse beep lights. The idea that we want to put a senior living community that close to that kind of construction just seems very odd. I'd recommend anyone to stand out in my backyard in the morning just to hear that, and I can't imagine wanting to hear that and those blasts and having, your loved ones, your elderly, witnessing that all the time.
Okay. I think Tom and then Dan.
Yeah, I have no axe to grind one way or the other. And the way I saw this was, we've got 12 of 22 respondents. Clearly, 58% see the open space as the top choice, but we're closer than we think, because I interpreted senior living as all 12 would take it as 1 through 4. So we're not as far apart here as we think in terms of potential options. I mean, looking at this right now, and I'm very interested in seeing what comes from the other 10, and I think the fact that we're discussing it now, and somehow Zach and Mark or Jim are just going to compose a nice email to the other 10 that the train's leaving the station, I'll be very interested in seeing how the other 10 respond, but right now, it looks to me like open space is number 1 and senior living is number 2, in some form or fashion. But, again, it's open to anybody. I think we're a lot closer than we think.
Dan?
I'm getting the sense that this is like the end here, like this is the survey, these are the results, and that makes me feel a little uncomfortable. This is a step in the process. Everybody should have an opportunity to go back in and revise their votes now based on what everybody else has said. Plus, I think Laura brings up a really good point. I mean, now's the time. If we're going to revise these, now's the time to revise it. This is great. It's the first time we've seen as a group where the group is. So now we can look at it individually again and see, okay, well, and I also agree with Ray. Top 3. I mean, I can't speak for the town board, but if I was on the town board, I wouldn't want 7 alternatives to choose from. Top 3. Gold, silver, and bronze. These are the ones. And this gets us there. It's the first step in that process. So, yes. And I also think we need to get, I would like to see it to be unanimous. Everybody on the committee should vote, period. Now, that might not be realistic, but that's what we should be going for. It helps you guys, and it helps the public.
Okay. Jim and then Bob.
Do you think maybe we need to kind of do another survey with the questions changed? Because I think, Zach, I'm not sure, but I think I put on my survey, the one thing is, I don't see anything about rezoning on that survey. And there's a few of us who would like to see rezoning on it. Do people want that or not?
I would say tonight's opportunity is to look at these questions again, fine-tune them, then send out another survey as that maybe that's the final one, I don't know. But yeah, I mean that's how I view this. Tonight's the time to talk about these things, and if we're going to fine-tune them, now's the time to do it. So yes, I agree.
So I think Bob, and then I've got then Zach. Carrie and then Zach.
It would help me to vote. I could vote if I take the understanding that where you're on those 3 mixed-use categories, and it amazes me that there's 3 of them, but there are, where you have residential. I'm going to assume residential means single-family home. Fair enough? Okay. That would be helpful. And then it would be really helpful for me to vote for senior living if the Ray Hutch one was inserted there somewhere, because I can't vote, that will be number 7 in my view, the one that's on there for the full spectrum, just to be honest. So if you wanted me to vote for senior living, it's got to be something other than that one.
Okay, Carrie, and then Zach.
My question is whether or not among whatever we decide, if we're going to revise these options slightly based on the feedback, the idea of ordering them, for me, I was hoping to be able to give them a score using the diving example, so that I could look at each one individually and decide on a scale from 1 to 5 or 1 to 7 or 1 to 10 what I thought of them, as how good they were. And because there might be, even if they're potentially polar opposites, there might be ideas there that I think both have merit in terms of a grading value. But if I have to rank them, then that's a little bit, it could be harder, but or maybe a little bit more difficult to understand the result. Whereas if you have an average score, you know out of it's, or maybe there's a combination there that we can use, so that helps to distinguish if there's any like trends or differences, if people are feeling that, then you get to see sort of grouping, if the same idea, kinds of ideas. And I do agree that with the park, open space, those are be fundamentally different in terms of, if it's active recreation, it's much different than, you know, trails and passive park space in terms of impacts and neighbors and who feels like that's a good fit or not a good fit for that use.
Hold on, Kaz. I think you've got Zach, and then yourself, and then Ann.
I just wanted to clarify on Jim's comment about the rezoning option. What I've taken away from all this is the reason why we don't put rezoning as a scenario is because it's involved with several of them. It's a tool to accomplish the scenario. It would have to be done. So to say just rezoning as a scenario, you have to say rezoning to what? And several of these, with the exception of R120 and 278, all involve a rezoning, which is why it's not there. Now, again, we're here to fix things, clarify responses, alter the survey, or edit the report, whatever we're here to do. But obviously, every comment is open for discussion.
Kaz?
Yeah, I just want to go back to Bob's comment regarding the mixed use. You could have mixed use residential. You could have townhouses, you could have cottage homes, you could have fourplex units, something of that nature. It doesn't have to be multi-story, it doesn't have to be apartments or anything of that nature.
And I'm assuming it won't be multi-story, that it can't be.
Well, it could be two-story. I mean, that would be no higher than what a single-family residence would be.
That's not R120.
Sure it is.
Sure it is. You could have a townhouse that's two-story.
I mean I'm sorry, I meant two-family, I'm talking about apartments.
No, that's right, and what I'm trying to say is that you could have different types of residential mixed-use development. It does not, you don't have to perceive it as being commercial or multi-story or anything of that nature. You could have mixed use, even on one story if you wanted to.
And it doesn't require rezoning for that.
That's correct.
I've got Ann. I've got Ann, and then I've got Ray, and then Jim.
I have one comment about the survey that's, by making us rank all 7 of them, there were a number of them I did not want to vote for at all. So I think you somewhat skew the results, because there are 3 that I maybe said, I don't support these at all, but I had to rank them as 5, 6, 7 when they were all equally unacceptable to me. So I think maybe if we did it and voted for the top 3 or top 4 or something like that, it might be much more instructive or helpful.
Ray?
Yeah, I wouldn't count any votes past the 4th box because it obviously wasn't something they wanted. They was forced to respond to it. Maybe they could recalculate based on that and give more credit to the first, somewhat less credit to the second. But I don't know, how'd you come up with the number in the first place? Because you did rank them all.
Monkey did. Yeah, it's just
What's the methodology?
The program does it.
I have a few
There
responses.
had to be a formula.
Yeah, I have a few responses to everything. Going back to the mixed-use discussion that just happened, I can tweak the wording in there. It's just tough to capture all of that in a single box description. So everything you said and what Jim said, we'll take into account. I guess as we're revising this survey for, it sounds like a second round. In this, and then on that second round approach that it sounds like we're taking, I don't know how the capabilities of SurveyMonkey and all of its extent. We don't have a pro account to this. I have limited resources on it. So the result there is I can send an email out, ask for your responses, and I'll gather it myself, put it into Excel, and analyze it. Carrie?
I have a pro account, so I have, because I had to create a survey for something I was doing at the town. So I believe I may be able to use that here, if that's helpful. It provides more, we had to do it because it had more analysis capability than the free download version, limits you to no more than 10 questions, and it limits the kinds of questions.
I learned
you
that very
can ask.
quickly.
Yes.
So we can work on that after this.
Okay.
Okay, before I get to Neil, so the question, just a question for Carrie. I want to make sure we're not jamming you up with your employer. And so if I need to make a phone call to kind of pave the way, I'll be more than happy to do that.
Well, that's very sweet. I've been doing this, my work here is happening at night on the weekends, and my employer is fully aware that I'm participating.
Okay,
And
like I
and
said, I'm
supported
not looking
and
to jam anybody up.
No, and
so-
supported me doing this. so-
Okay, thank you.
so-
I'd rather check and just make sure, so.
I appreciate that,
Neil.
thank you.
Yeah, I guess I have a few points. One, hey, I'm not surprised that 7 people voted for the open space option. I mean, I think several members of the committee have the Save Shadow Pines signs in their front yard. My concern all along has been, the costs of this option, which I don't want to belabor, because of course that's going to be a significant, I would hope it would be a significant consideration for the town board to even present such an option to the voters, and I certainly hope it would be something the voters would consider. So, there's cost, there's a need, which again is a related issue. And I guess the other concern I have is, we're only going to have gold, silver, and bronze. That's all we're going to consider. Again, my personal motivation or goals would be the following: one, avoid or minimize costs to the taxpayer. Generate additional reasonable tax revenue out of this parcel of land, because I think we're in a climate with tax cap and everything else that makes that more essential than ever. And let me just say, I'm very appreciative of the long standing efforts of the town board to come up with a budget that meets needs, priority needs of the town and minimizes the tax rate. And another thing that's important to me is private ownership and development of property. Having said that, I think that, I certainly have no quarrel with neighbors of Shadow Pines who would be looking to have their property buffered from development. And I also think that could be achieved by some private development of the property. I think that could be win-win. And at last meeting, I was encouraged that, at least as I perceived it, that a few members, again, maybe with different alternative views of how to develop the property, but I think they were all saying, we really need to reach out to the development community, various elements of it, whether it's senior citizen or others, I think several people even mentioned RFP, and I think that's important because, again, looking forward to any further discussion at the town board level to evaluate alternatives or, at a referendum, I think we just owe it to ourselves to say, is there a way that, many objectives that I just mentioned that are important to me personally can be achieved, and at the same time, we preserve substantial green space? My belief is you could do it, but we're not going to know that until we put all of these range of alternatives out there. And look, if it's an alternative only had one or two people voting for it, great, but I guess we can say that's the case, but then at least you can list the cons or the pros to that. And but I think these things all need to be evaluated. I don't think we can undertake the Olympics approach of we're only talking gold, silver, and bronze in a straw vote, which, look, I just, given the makeup of the committee, there's a big built-in understandable voting bias in favor of open space, because it's like, hey, this is what we want. We want to keep what we have. Well, we can't. Some people want to keep what you have, somehow get a golf course going. Others just we don't want anything in our backyard. And I understand that, but there's a big cost to that has got to be accounted for and evaluated.
I agree with you.
Ray, Jim, and then Bob.
Should I go first? I think the cost has to be a factor there, and a feasibility study has to determine whether or not it's likely that you get a contractor to be willing to invest in the land to build a senior living, and if there were to be 4 holes of golf, would they include that in their design? If we were able to approach a couple contractors with this concept and get them interested, and I'd be willing to take that role. And if we fail at getting anybody interested, then it precludes the feasibility of it. But I believe it could be done, and it would help save a lot of money for the town. Instead, a compromise solution is that the back 9 would be open space. You wouldn't do anything with that. You keep that open space for everybody to walk and do whatever they want. Doesn't make sense to develop that or to try to bring cars in and out of that area, so we all know that. So why not just focus on the front 9 and how we can break that up in a mixed-use environment and still have plenty of open space, because the senior living isn't going to take that much space. But it'll take a lot of the cost out of it. And the Clark House will take some costs out of it as well. I think you could cut it in half. Instead of $3 million, whatever the number is, it could be less. It could be half of that. Make it a lot easier to get it approved through the town if it was only half as expensive.
Jim, and then Bob.
I got 2 or 3 things here now. Zach, just so for clarification, when I talk about rezoning, I understand a lot of these things might have to be rezoned. I'm talking about strictly rezoning it into a new category of recreational, that the town comes up with studies, and the town needs it. This is a good time to do it, and it covers a lot of ground. The second of the 3 points I wanted to ask, and this is, Bob, you can just give me a yes or no answer on this, but just to the little conversation we've had today about so much conversation about everything else, Bob was just talking about he might be up for some senior living, okay? I know Bob pretty well. I'm not sure what he means by that. Is that if you can't have open space?
That's if I can't have open space. That's my next best alternative. And I would vote that after any of the open spaces. And I had voted for the Highlands type senior committee as my last. That would be last on my list. And I would put something that, like what Ray's been talking about, much higher up. After any of the open space. I thought the golf course as an open space would be on there, but it's not. It's just open space, and as Laura was saying, there's only that one category. We've got one category of open space and 3 categories of mixed use, and I'm a little bit flummoxed by that. But yes, I agree with you, Jim.
Okay, so you answered.
My third point on this is to the conversation that's going on. Yes, there are a handful of us, maybe 5 or 6 people that live on the golf course. And in my case, it's very personal because I lived there for 30 years, and I spent 4 years looking for a house to take care of my father, and I wanted to live there because I expected that to stay open space. So it's extremely personal to me. But on the other hand, we have pushback from some, there are people, obviously, this represents the town, and there's people that are talking about development rights for private enterprise and this and that, and that's fine. But if we go back, I hear me, This is not about Jim, this is not about Neil, it's not really about anybody. When we use the term "we," we're talking about both the committee and the town. And I personally don't have a problem with telling the board that we, the town and this thing, our first choice is figure out a way to do it open space. And then that's what I'd like to talk about. And then if that can't be done, if we get sued and lose, or it's just too expensive to do, then go to Plan B. That's how most businesses work. But again, I would like to quit spending so much time on all this other stuff, and let's start talking about, or let's revote, so at the next meeting, we can talk about what our number one choice is, and put all this other stuff in the back burner. Okay? That's a what if. You know, let's get down to what our one choice is.
Bob?
Yeah, I just want to say, and again, Jim covered it, but Neil, yeah, we're interested as neighbors as to keeping that as the best possible situation for our quality of life, and we're used to it being a golf course, certainly. We know the golf course is dead, it's been killed. And budgets are important, and we appreciate the job Tony and the town board and our supervisors that preceded him keeping our town taxes in really good shape and keeping the town progressing and being a good town and a great place to live. And we do have to analyze the costs and worry about the budgets, but how do you put the price on quality of life? That's something we're not talking about here, and those of us who talk about wanting to keep aspects of the Shadow Pines property for future town park are thinking about what the quality of life will be for our children, our grandchildren, when that quarry ends, and could be a very beautiful lake. For me, it's important to save the back nine, to prevent the back nine from being developed under any circumstances, so that is possible to become a town park in the future. Not now, but 30 years from now or whenever. And that's it. And I just say, as a resident, I'm interested in the quality of life of Shadow Pines, what it provides for myself, but they're also 97% of the residents of the town that there was over 400 of them left comments on the website or showed up at the public hearing. Over 400 out of 470 people, 97% of them are for open space. So it's not just the 5 of us that live next to Shadow Pines.
Carrie? Then Kaz?
One of the things I think about, I think we're all, or many of us, are probably living in a house that may have been viewed as ruining the community character at the time it was developed. So I think that's one thing we have to sort of be thinking about. We all are living somewhere in a development that somebody before us hated or objected to, potentially, or thought was a terrible idea and was going to ruin Penfield. And so that's something that we need to be thinking about in the back of our mind as we contemplate the future of the next 20 years or 30 years, or protecting community character. And I'm not saying that for or against any particular plan. I'm just saying, as far as a context, we have to be thinking about that. And it's that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Kaz?
Just going back to the layout here, and certainly we can modify that. If you were, and I'm kind of talking to you because you and I had talked about this earlier, but if a senior housing facility of some type, say like the Highlands or something like that, were to come into us and say, we will give you the back nine, or we'll give you 50% of the land if you let us build something like the Highlands, is that something, and it's really kind of directed to everybody on the committee, as you're looking at your rankings again, that's kind of a different situation than just saying the Highlands, because now I think you're interpreting that as they're just going to build out a senior facility on every square inch of land out there if they can. But if there's a component, not only just with the Highlands, but if there are other developments out there where the developer is proposing 50% of preservation or close to it, that could be a recommendation. You know, you could make the recommendation, we might support the Highland type development if you get the back nine, or if a developer comes in and he's willing to give 50% of the land back to the town for parkland. That's one that we haven't really incorporated in here, but it's something maybe we should look at as an option for a recommendation to the town board.
Jim, and then Zach.
I will remind everybody, a meeting or two ago, I put up a graph, and I understand the DEC doesn't have anything they can enforce from the law, but the DEC does have guidelines. And they asked the question, is there going to be anything within 1,500 feet of the mine? And 1,500 feet is a par 5. And I went out with my GPS and my phone recently, and the school already to the north is within 1,500 feet, and 90%, let's say we came up with some idea of develop the front 9 and give the back 9 away, except for the 7th and 8th hole, or excuse me, the 6th green, the 7th tee, and the 8th tee. All that other stuff on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th hole, which is the majority of the golf course there, that's all within 1,500 feet of the mine, of the quarry. And Carrie, the one thing I didn't understand what you were saying is, I think you said that when our houses were built, whether we bought them first or not, probably somebody didn't want them because it was in their way. And that's somewhat true, but we've had a quarry in the midst of us for 88 years, and besides the people that live on it, maybe the long-term plan is to save that for quality of life. And maybe someday it does become a park, whether it costs us money or not, we don't know. But I think that's what a lot of us are looking at. And I, for one, think this is way different than any other development we've ever had in town because of the 88-year-old quarry.
I appreciate that. I certainly do. One of the things, though, I think we want to be mindful of in terms of how we present our information is the leaning on the protecting quality of life doesn't hold water maybe the same as what you did, the way you just described it. Do you know what I mean? So that we just sort of do the quality of life reference without understanding why that matters so much here, then I'm afraid that message is going to get lost. And so that's one of the things. I just want to be mindful of how I'm thinking in terms, and I apologize, when I think about our conversations, I'm thinking about how it's going to get written, and that's just the way my head works, so I apologize. But we want to be thinking of framing that in a way that doesn't just sound like not in my backyard.
So I've got Ann, and I've got Dan, and then I'll come back to Ray, and then Dr. Tom. So Ann.
Somewhat to what Jim says, we do live near a quarry. There's a lot of truck traffic, and some of what mitigates that for people who live around there is the fact that you have all this beautiful undeveloped space. And I think once you develop it, it completely changes the character of the area. And personally, for me, I'd be less willing to put up with the inconvenience of having all those trucks. That's a lot of truck traffic, whereas on the infrastructure, if that land's going to get developed, then maybe that's not an area I want to live in. That's my choice to move someplace else. I think also those of us who seem to want to preserve it are somewhat being demonized. And if you look at, say, senior living, the people that are supporting senior living are mostly the senior citizens on this committee. So I think we all have somewhat of a personal agenda on it, and I think probably they're all equally valid points and points of view to base our decisions on.
Dan?
I'm getting frustrated and concerned. I haven't heard anything new tonight that I haven't heard at every single meeting since the beginning. We've run out of time. We've got 1, maybe 2 meetings left, and we're still talking about the same issues. We evaluated all the impacts, we heard all the comments, we distilled it down to 7 options. Tonight's meeting should be refine those options, get it back out to the committee for their final determination. And we're already another hour into it, and we haven't progressed further. This survey should have been a month ago. And here we are at the end of the process, and we have the first stab at understanding where the committee is. And we're still spinning our wheels on the same topics and the same points that we've made over and over again. All due respect, Jim, you're not going to sway everybody on this committee. I understand your passion, and if I was in your shoes, I'd be as passionate as you. But it's just not going to happen. At this point, we need to move ahead, fine-tune this, and get some recommendations on paper, or September is going to be here and we're going to have nothing to show for it.
Right?
Just for your information, Carrie, our property preceded the quarry by 140 years.
Oh,
But
okay, I knew that we had at least one exception.
But my owning it is only 41, so they did precede us. Yeah. But I made the decision to live next to the quarry, and I live closer to the quarry than anyone else. We're within 1,500 feet of the quarry, and I'm willing to live that way. So I don't think it's unfeasible to have property within 1,500 feet of the quarry, having lived that way for 41 years. I mean, if I were to move into senior living, I wouldn't be any closer than I am now.
Okay, so Dan's got a comment on the table that is pretty powerful, that the hands of time are ticking. So I'm going to kind of paraphrase Dan, so I apologize. But the hands of time are ticking, feeling a lot of pressure of getting something taken care of here. You've got 16 members of the 22 sitting around the table tonight. If this group is able to go through and clean up those, we could print out 16 sheets, and we could hand them out tonight. And before you went, you could do your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever that is. So that we can condense the time, and we could probably even before the close of tonight, or at the very latest first thing tomorrow, have a listing of what that looks like. So I think I cut off Dr. Tom because I apologize. I think you were the last one, and I thought I'd capture everybody before I made that comment. But Dr. Tom,
Three quick comments. I live very close to the quarry. I would be very unhappy if there were a lot of traffic. It's my business to do what I think what's in best interest of the town, not what's personally best for me. I'll just leave it at that. Second comment. I agree with Dan. We've heard it all 100,000 times. Tony, I was going to ask the same thing you just said. Thank you.
so yes, Laura.
So in light of moving the survey forward, I propose the following edits, I guess. Is this a good way to do this? I propose for equal weighting opportunities, maybe provide 2 options per scenario, let's call them. So maybe 2 options for open space with a very detailed description of what those 2 are, 2 options for mixed use with detailed description, 2 options for senior living, again with description, and then the remaining, however many are there. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. So Jim and then Craig.
I really very much hesitate to bring this up because it's kind of a different direction, but I think it deserves to be said. Suppose, we live in a community and in a state, an upstate part of the state, where real estate is relatively inexpensive compared to other parts of the country. And let me just ask the question, what if, let's say a small group of people, like 10, said, we'll take the property and we'll only build 10 homes. On the entire 210 acres, we'll only build 10 homes. You know where they're going to put them. They're going to put them in the most beautiful parts of the course, but a large percentage of the space would be preserved. In many parts of the country, that would still be inexpensive real estate. Divide $3 million by 10. It's inexpensive real estate in a lot of parts of the country. And people who want to build high-end estate-type homes would find that a pretty good deal. What it would accomplish for all of us is that we'd be preserving a very large percentage of the space as open space. We'd end up with a very limited number of homes. They'd be beautiful homes. They'd be in the most beautiful parts of the golf course. But we would have accomplished what I think a lot of us want to accomplish, and that is saving a lot of open space, probably with the potential of having a lot of trails. Just a thought, just totally different thought than having a senior community or than having total preservation of open space.
Craig?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that if we're reformatting this, these 7 options, that we take the, I guess, the second and possibly even the third option on the screen right now that scored so far below the others, and just remove them from the discussion at this point.
Well, like the Republican thing, cut down to the last 3 candidates, right?
Well, here's my take on that. Actually, if you put I think the second option, develop for a single-family home, has been tarred with this brush from the word go of, oh my God, 255 homes. I've heard, comments at the public hearing, ticky-tacky houses, blah, blah, blah. Quite frankly, I'm not even in favor of that. I was always the cluster home thing, because again, with the clustering, we could preserve a lot of buffer and a lot of open space. But, if you added the two together, which again, I guess goes to, you can play any kind of game you want to with a chart like this. Hey, I'm actually ahead. If I put 1.75 and 3.5 together, I'm at 5.25. That's even better than open space. It all depends on what your assumptions are. And, so my assumption is if you went to a housing developer who is, we've been talking about at several meetings, hey, almost all developers want to come in and do cluster development because it saves them money on development costs. And, it doesn't have to be 255 houses. I don't know what's the right number. But, I think somebody would come forward and preserve a huge portion of this site, because it would be a wonderful amenity to make their project more valuable. And it would preserve, would take off of their cost, running streets and sewers and all that stuff. So again, I just think we shouldn't be throwing any alternative down the tubes. If it's, most people are against it for whatever reason, that's great, but I think every one of these things should have some kind of hearing, even if it's number 7 out of 7. Because I think putting your eggs in this basket of, oh, we're going to buy it, and then we're going to do something with it, open space, recreation. It's really a risky proposition, I believe.
Okay, Dan, and then Ray.
I agree. I don't think at this point we should be taking anything off the list. We should be fine-tuning the list.
Okay, Ray, and then I've got a suggestion, hopefully, to take it to the next step. So go ahead, please, Ray.
I promise not to be long. I just think we have to do a feasibility of every suggestion. How long will it take to sell 255 homes in this community, given the demographics? It would take 10 years at least. Meanwhile, it's construction going on constantly, and then there's the traffic impact and the school impact, which we've already decided would be very devastating. And you're not going to build on the back 9 anyway, so let's take that out of the question. So that should be open space without any question. I think we could agree to that if you just think about how it's laid out there, the topography and the access to the Clark Road and Wayland. This doesn't make sense to have a community there. So we're only talking about the front 9 and what do we do with that. And the Clark House does deserve to be preserved. I mean, I know it's just my opinion, but I think we could make the feasibility case for it. All we have to do is get one contractor to agree, and it wouldn't take that long to sell 50 if it's that. We set a maximum number of senior living. Like there's 39 in your place right now, Tom, right? And that's a reasonable amount to assimilate, just as Shadow Lake has done it. It doesn't have to be rezoned or anything to meet that criteria. And that wouldn't have that devastating an impact on traffic. It would have almost no impact on the school, since the senior living people would have their grandkids visiting, but they wouldn't have any kids in the school system. So, and the cost would be reduced dramatically. And I think it was a compromise if we were willing to build 4, if we made a condition that they built 4 holes for the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, which are the easier ones to do. That's a buffer for the people who live on that side of those holes. I think that's a compromise everybody could conceivably live with, but
Heidi?
From like what I'm hearing, I feel like there's a lot of pieces that maybe somebody would support, but there's the tail end that it's hanging people up so they can't move forward. I guess from the survey, maybe going even simpler, and if you look at the ideas here, I feel like there's really three. It's like open space with some definition defining mixed or development. And my thought would be from a survey right now, could we rank 2? What is your number 1 and what would your number 2? Are you open space, and then your second option, if that's not feasible, would mixed use be your second? Or would you go from an open space and jump right into a full development? I guess I'm kind of curious as to where are we all as a group, number 1 at the top, like is it open space recreational? Are we all there? I think with all of the ranking 1 through 6, I guess I'd like that definition. Is everybody kind of unanimous, like we want to fight for, open space? And if that's the case, bam, there's our number 1. We're open space. Now let's kind of work together as a committee to define that. And then number 2 is our second option, mixed space. And then what are our options there? Is mixed space meaning, a portion of it is going to stay open space recreation, and then your options, retail, what are those mixed options? Retail, office space, clusters, senior living, because I guess the senior living, is that, my question on that senior living, is that the whole parcel or the whole chunk be senior living and the cottages and everything? Or is that just senior living meaning just a corner of it? I guess that's what I'm like questioning.
be a very small portion.
So, but again, and then your third, so then what is that third option? Is the third option then is a development? And then if it's going to have to go to a development, what are our recommendations? If it's got to go development, there's no way it's going to be open space, there's no way it's going to be mixed, it's going to be development, then what are our rankings there? But I feel like if we can go very general at the beginning and kind of figure out what those are, then I don't think we would get so hung up on those. And then we can start to define. I guess that's just a thought.
Okay.
Long-winded thought.
Any last minute thoughts? Carrie?
I'm wondering if the survey could also include a percentage you would want to see developed in some way, so that for those people who want to see nothing happen, there's an option to say you want 0% development allowed on the, and I'm talking mostly about, in this case, the Shadow Pines, because location, that particular section. But if this way, folks can identify whether they would consider, 0%, 10%, 20%, 30, 40, 50, 60, all the way to 100% for some type of development besides open space to be considered. And that might help gauge where we are on the spectrum of people saying, I want nothing, I want it to be green and open and nothing happen, to I would think about having some level of development happen somewhere, and then that would give us an idea of where we are on the spectrum of from open space to full build out, where we are as a group.
Okay. Dan?
I like Heidi's approach, and I was wondering if, and this is a Survey Monkey question, is it possible to do sort of this higher level survey, and then a subset to that we can evaluate even more detail? So you can choose, if open space is where your heart is, then you choose open space, and then under the subset you can say, I really want it to be park or recreational. Is that possible in the Survey Monkey?
Yeah, so I'll double check that. I can take a look. I'll log in tonight and take a look. But it usually there's if you answer something to this question, you can have drill down questions beyond that. So you could structure it in a way that you could sort of break down. As we were sitting here, I was taking in what everybody was saying and thinking, as I'm thinking about it, there's is open space as active recreation, then there's open space as passive recreation. There's allowing for senior development, that would be just standard regular housing, not non-institutional senior-focused housing, or institutional complex development. So and then there's mixed-use residential with a mix of development types, meaning residential, non-residential, or mixed-use residential only, just a combination of houses or townhouses. And then lastly, it's single-family development, as is, current zoning, or single-family development using cluster. So there's two per, somebody said, there's sort of two options within each of those categories. And so now that's technically 8, but it's sort of defining, so there's 2 in each category, and then that was my thought. And then the other thing is, you could ask about the Clark House as a standalone question, and the question should be, can the Clark House continue to operate in any of the scenarios above as something like a restaurant or some other use similar, or should it not be allowed to continue? And then yes or no to that. And then you get to some handle on where everybody is.
So I was going to bypass Survey Monkey and get right down to Survey Mouse. So what I mean by that is that going back to my original comments, so taking some pieces of Dan's comment and Heidi's comment, do we feel comfortable in the next 15 or 20 minutes of putting something together down, whether that's the top 3 or the top 7, or utilizing everything there, and then if you want to say something about the Clark House, yes or no. Again, you've got 16 of the team members here right now, and we could walk away rather than creating it, getting it out, waiting for folks to maybe or maybe not return it. And again, I think Dan made an excellent observation. Is that time keeps ticking away, and before you know it, the 2nd of September is upon us. So, yeah. So we've got, and then we'll go over here to Laura, and then to Neil, please.
So can we just do a hand survey? Do we agree with Heidi that we should distill this down to 3 or 4 higher level, broader approaches? Show of hands for yes. Does that count us up?
That's
Good, we're a majority?
I mean, it's the majority.
All right, so let's start with that, and you put on the table open space.
Open space, mixed and
microphone.
development. Open
Thank you,
space,
Dan.
mixed and development.
Did we miss any? Is there a 4th one?
What about
Clark as a separate issue.
Do you want to put the Clark House on as a separate issue? Any naysayers? Speak up now.
Yeah, I'm a naysayer.
Isn't it protected as
Okay.
historical?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, so hold on, so we don't get too far afield here. Dan, have you finished your thought there for now?
Yeah, my only other thing is that perhaps the mixture of use maybe needs to define a little bit more. That would be my only other comment to the 3.
Okay. Laura. Laura first.
I just
Jim,
have a-
and then we're going to jump down to Neil, and then Jim, and then Jim.
I just have a quick comment.
Yep.
That I've just completely forgotten to mention in past meetings. And it's actually
You bought the property?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All
won the
right, I'll
lotto.
buy the beer tonight.
I wish that's what I was saying. So someone had mentioned this at the town public meeting, and I thought it was an excellent point, and I was hoping, I just don't really know how to visualize this, but in the park area, if we could somehow add handicap accessibility, a handicap accessible park, because of the fact that there may be grant opportunities, as well as adding a handicap accessible park to Monroe County, which there are not many of them in Monroe County right now. Because of the way that the land is designed currently, with a direct connection of the parking lot to existing trails, it may make sense to do that. So I don't know how we would capture that, but that is just a comment.
Okay, thank you. We have Ray, or Neil, excuse me, and then Jim, and then Jim.
Yeah, I think we should try to wrap something up. My question or request was maybe we could go to the other part of the Survey Monkey, which was Shadow Lakes. Could we resolve Shadow Lakes? I don't know what the results were on that one. I'm kind of hoping it would be. I mean, that...
He's going to check Shadow Lake.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, Zach's going to create at least a rough Excel spreadsheet kind of off of what I heard and what Carrie had is, breaking up, and we're doing the overall group list. But I think with 8 categories, and then people can add a ranking, at least tonight roughly, we can work out more details and send out SurveyMonkey and everything else. But I think as to Tony's point, if we can have, at least as I sketched it out from what I heard, open space active, open space passive, both, 2 different categories, 1 for each. Then have R120 option, which is the current zoning, a cluster, 2 different senior institutional, senior smaller scale preservation of area, and then I put 2 different mixed use options, mixed use residential only, mixed use residential with retail and commercial.
I know we got Zach doing several things, but I don't know. I mean, can we scroll forward to what the Shadow Lake survey results were, if we've got those, or we just have Shadow Pines? I'm kind of hoping we can put that to bed, or maybe we can't. But
That's a great idea.
I mean, it'd be nice. I'm with Dan. It'd be nice to like, okay,
A no-brainer.
we knocked something off here.
I did. They were compromised.
Okay.
Can you go on the bottom?
Waiting for something.
I guess it came up.
It's coming up right here.
It's right there.
Yeah. So 7 out of 12, 1 rezone.
So 7 said renew or rezone to open space, 4 said do nothing, and 1 is alternative plan option.
Well, hey, okay, fine. That's at least a little less complicated than Shadow Pines, it seems to me. Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. I've got Jim, and then Jim.
Maybe this is redundant on that, but in this list, we're going to put together and have a little straw vote tonight, I guess, to make another vote for everybody on the internet or whatever. The Shadow Lake there, I think, was 7 of 12. Is that what it was? On the rezoning, I assume that means that we're going to consider, or we should consider, Shadow Lake in everything we're doing. And I would, just as that was, I still think if we're going to have open space, maybe a single family, maybe senior living and mixed that we're voting for tonight, what would it hurt to throw just a flat rezoning to recreational and on Shadow Pines also? If I'm the only one that wants it, that's fine, I'll be quiet, but I just...
But I thought there would be 2 open space, so by virtue of the open space being selected as your preference, you're saying that's what it would be?
That's what we're going to assume?
Well, if the town purchases, my understanding is that those 2 open space options where it's open space active recreation or open space passive are in both of those scenarios, what we're envisioning is the town purchasing the property?
Not to interrupt. If I heard Zach right, the rezoning for for Shadow Pines is going to take place based on what we decide. There's the first option, then ultimately what the town decides they're going to do with it. That in part and parcel, though, would be rezoning involved.
No, I understand that, but I always thought it was just an option to rezone it recreational and walk away and let the marketplace do what it does with it. I mean, I thought that was an option. That's all I'm saying.
Before Kaz, I owe Jim Olmsted. and then you, Kaz, and then we'll come back to Craig.
Okay, I'm going to apologize again for having thrown out that one last idea I had, but there was a reason I threw it out, and the reason is this. I think our overarching feeling about this 210 acres is that we want to preserve the natural beauty of the place, have some public access, and the one thing we hadn't even considered was the thing I threw out a few minutes ago. And I really think we're going to be making a mistake if we think that we're going to give the town board our ranking of, well, we'd like to have the town acquire all of it, or we'd like to see a senior citizen project here, or we'd like to see a mixed-use development here. I think what we're trying to accomplish is what I said earlier, that we're trying to preserve as much of the natural beauty of this 210 acres as we can, with some benefit to the residents of the town, which probably could be trails. Doesn't have to be active recreation, but I think we'd like some public access. And ultimately, the town board is going to have to, I think, go to developers and ask for some RFPs to accomplish what we want accomplished. And there probably will be developers who would be willing to put up a cluster development. There probably would be developers who would be willing to come up with a sort of cluster development that embraces senior living. There probably would be developers that would be willing to come up with just a cluster development residential. I think there would be developers that might be willing to come forward with a very limited number of very high-end homes, which again, I think accomplishes our overarching goal, which is preserve the beauty of this place and give us some public access. So, forgive me, Tony, but you guys are the guys that make the big bucks here. And ultimately, it's going to come down to the town board going out to developers asking, come forward with some ideas that would accomplish what we want accomplished with this property. I think for us to get too specific as to how we're going to make that happen might be a mistake.
Okay. Jim?
I just want to go back to the rezoning issue for a minute. First of all, every one of the proposals, the options, the scenarios there, don't necessarily require rezoning to accomplish. Certainly if the town ends up owning the property, it doesn't need to rezone property. It has total control over the property no matter what it's zoned. If the town is not able to acquire the property, any of the proposals that come in, whether they're single family or senior housing or whatever the case may be, those could be accomplished through incentive zoning. The town board has used incentive zoning many times in this town. We've had good projects come through them. The incentive in this case would be obviously preservation of open space. So that is something the town board could work with any developer on any project to accomplish without rezoning. The other issue is that, you know, when I was listening to Mr. Horowitz speak the other night about going through the process of rezoning to a recreation zone or some zone that diminishes the value of that property, to me, I was kind of amazed that the committee saw fit to vote that size they did. I see that as a potential lawsuit just waiting to happen. I mean, unless we have some real demanding reason, such as that other community did, where they were under a flood control situation that truly benefited the community in a physical way, that they had issued problems with in terms of spending money to resolve, I just see this as being a real problem in terms of having to deal with diminishment of value of property.
We've got Craig and then Carrie.
Yeah, that was exactly the point I was going to make. I mean, I heard loud and clear from their attorney that the option of just rezoning in order to depress the value of it just doesn't really offer us a real alternative at all, and is, you know, inviting a lawsuit, in which case we'd probably lose, and we should have spent that money on buying it in the first place.
Carrie? And then Jim.
So I was going to just say that, you know, in the RFP situation, the town would actually have to own the property, and we don't have that we're not in that position right now. It's privately owned, so we can't, at this point, only way to achieve, and I appreciate what you're saying, you know, the larger would be to have to rezone to a very, very large lot zoning to accomplish that, or to purchase the land and then RFP for that specific purpose. And I'm, to the point, I don't know if there's a market in our area for that kind of development. And especially with the land value, what the money that you would need to get, you know, and then not even counting just land acquisition alone for that scale of development would be hard to overcome. And then that's not including actually building anything. And then I have to apologize. I have a personal commitment. I need to go see somebody who's from out of town.
Not a problem.
And so I didn't realize we were voting. Oh, they can come on in? There's no beer here, though, and where I'm going, there's... I just said that on television, didn't I? And I forgot we're on television. Well, that's fantastic.
We'll let it,
Well, all right.
We'll edit that out.
Okay. So I apologize. And if I'm happy to vote by email tomorrow if everybody needs me to do that. I'm happy to participate.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Jim Froome, and then Bob.
On the rezoning, just a couple points I'd like to make. I don't think anybody would be stupid enough to say, let's rezone it to diminish their value so that somebody can buy it cheaper. That's not the object. The object is to go with what the master plans have been, what the 88-year history of the quarry has been, what the property has been to that quarry, and to maybe finish that off. You know, what was started in 1966 when they talked about it. So, and in terms of, I guess I heard something different than everybody else did, as I've had 2 conversations with lawyers about, you know, what's the probability and what's the possibility of rezoning. And I've done some research through the New York State, and it is a possibility. Is it something that we want to do? That's not up to the 25 people here. That's up to the town and your attorneys. Mm-hmm. And I would hope that just like you went out for request of quotes to 7 or 8 or 9 people for the appraisal, you would do the same thing if rezoning was something that was a possibility. The town, in doing their due diligence, would talk to 5 or 6 or 7 attorneys that specialize in this. Okay? Because in all the cases, you know, 9 times out of 10 you lose, but on the cases you win, in New York State, quality of life is an issue. Working to a master plan, having a plan. And Penfield has done all those things, and it was in our task when you talked about the things we've done. So we're in pretty good shape on that, but it's not up to us to decide if we can do it or not. I'm just saying I think it should be on the table, and then it's up to you guys if that's a possibility that people want. You look into it, and you get the legal opinions.
Okay. Don? Oh, Bob, and then Don. Sorry. Yep.
Am I understanding the exchange between Kerry and Jim about the town buying it for development? That's feasible. You're not subject to the terms of alienation?
I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
But
You
don't
buy it
hold
for
me.
general.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Keep it open. Keep it broad. Don?
I'm not sure what just happened, but we were on this path going forward, and all of a sudden we got dragged right back into the weeds. We have somebody who presented 3 options. The open space with some development, and total development. I'm paraphrased, I think I got it. Where'd we go off on that? Why aren't we talking about that? We're back on this, you know, rezoning, which we've talked about. We've had the attorney in. We've got these 3 points. Can we explore those so we move forward?
So we have Mr. Nursinger right there, and Mr. Valentine. Okay, Zach, we've had him in the back 40. So go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, based on everything that's taken place so far, kind of created a more general survey, kind of to reevaluate everyone's position, where they stand right now. It did take into account all 3 categories, but we did also offer the 2-option approach to it, so that everyone has that opportunity to do it. It is a rank 1 through 10 with your highest. It can have no response, it can have multiple responses, it can have,
So why
same
don't we,
response.
if you have copies,
I can hand them out if people want to
let's
look at
do
them.
that. Let's do that because then we can get another level of discussion here. So just hand out a couple on either end and then just pass them down, Zach, and then let's tweak it. So, Mr. Valentine, I'm gonna charge you and/or Zach to kind of keep the master.
Yep.
And if we want to make some tweaks and changes, we'll do that. And then
Let's say
go
we
right
just
ahead.
we just
And
roughed out.
use your outside voice there, Mr. Valentine.
Yeah, my microphone
Thanks.
seems to be dying, so we just very rough categories. Obviously, this is a quick and dirty survey to it. I guess let's pose this to the group before we start writing. I think we have it in there, rank them, if it's 1, it's your favorite, if it's 10, it's your least favorite. Is that a better option, or do you want to rank them 1 to 8? 1 is your first option, 2 is your second option. I guess I'll pose that to the group before people go in different directions, so.
Easier to do 1, 2, 3, but
That's why I'm asking the question. If we just want to say 1 is your first option, 2 is your second option, 3 is your third option, we can get into SurveyMonkey and, then bore down with more detail and stuff from there. But if that's an easier, just list them 1 to 8 is your preferred options. Is that how everybody wants to do it? I'm not seeing anybody say no, so we're...
Do you want the number 1 being your preferred option, or do you want to use a weighting scale where the higher number is your preferred option?
That's the question I'm asking. I mean, you can go either way. If everybody ranks something number 1, then obviously that's number 1. We can, basically just do an inverted scale that the lowest number is your preferred option, so you can work it either way. But I think just saying, going 1 to 8, we have 8 categories. Put whatever your first option is number 1, whatever your second option is number 2. We can collect them, we can pass that out, quickly in an email tomorrow, and then obviously we can do a SurveyMonkey that then, bores down more deeply. We can ask the questions about, what to do with the Clark House. We can ask, what do you like about that, and others. But at least this hopefully gets us something quick and dirty. We can get it back out to the groups, and we can get our
1 is the best.
writing.
Right?
1 is the best. 1 through 8.
I have one question.
Scratching right now.
On the mixed-use 1, multiple styles of residence?
Residential, so residential only, but it could be townhouses, patio homes. It would just be a mixture of.
I think this might be Laura's comment before. Where's the mixed use that has open space, residential, and...
I think it's inherent that there would be some open space in any mixed use because.
But park, or, I think there's a third mixed use here. Not to muddy the water, but I think there's a third mixed use.
For now, let's go with the 2 we have. SurveyMonkey will have a third mixed use with park.
Let's just stay on one topic at a time. Let's stay with the first one first, the open space. And one of my questions is, are you checking if you want active recreation, or if you're checking if you want passive, or is there an option for a third to have a combination of both? Because you're kind of turning it into a gigantic football field on one, and you're turning it into paths on the other. Is there a combination that allows for both within that mixture?
Active on the front 9, passive on the back 9.
Well, that could be an option.
Maybe that's what we need to do, is add a
Third
third
one.
component for open space and a third component for mixed use.
It's not realistic, you're going to mow
You're right.
the whole thing.
You're right. But somebody might want to see everything fields, and another person might want to see everything paths.
So did we add 2 or not?
If we're adding 2, now we're 1 to 10.
So we adding that space.
I need a new form.
We're adding, I guess we're adding open space, combo or mixed. So as your third option, so active and passive. And we're adding mixed use number 3, which is a combination with a park area. So now you're going 1 to 10.
Okay, all right.
So we're using all the numbers?
Using all the numbers, just use each number once.
Use each number once?
Use each number once. So 1 is your favorite, 2 is your second favorite, on down.
Okay.
Yes.
You're just guessing on your sixth and seventh choice, you don't care at that point.
Well, this one have to wait a week for results. Would you?
And you're not necessarily looking for names at the top. You don't care either way.
I'm not looking to call anybody out.
Right,
It's just
we're
more-
not looking to call anyone out. We're just looking to get some information. Doctor?
This time he means me.
Oh, thank God. I jump up like
I see.
Yes, sir, what do you need? Who's collecting his heart?
Just for the record, I know I've said it a couple times, or John Piper, the board president, has, but you won't get a survey from me because I wear a hat in this community where I live here, and then I wear a hat at this table, which is superintendent, so I don't feel appropriate speaking for the 900 employees and 3,500 families we have. But I kept some notes on it, so, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
But if you were going to vote, no, sorry.
I will, someday I will tell you that, years from now.
Thank you, Tom.
Over a drink, I got you.
Is the mixed use with open, is that commercial or multiple styles, or is it just open to anything?
20-story buildings.
Yeah, okay.
You want Ellison Heights all over again?
So as folks are going through and judiciously filling this out, Mr. Valentine, what do you see as the next steps?
Obviously, it would take us more than probably a few minutes to pull all the stuff together. We can gather that, get an email out to the group tomorrow, or at least tabulation, we'll update it in here in the Excel spreadsheet and say, here's the top categories, here's the information we have. And then, obviously, I think from there, hopefully that'll coalesce around a couple of ideas. We can then get the Survey Monkey out to the rest of the group, the people that are not here tonight, give them one last chance to weigh in on their option. If they don't choose to weigh in, then obviously I think the rest of the group is moving on anyway.
And the Survey Monkey that is going to go out is going to be?
It'll be almost these same questions. We'll just add in the more detail to it right here. Obviously, it's just down and dirty.
Yep.
For this, we can add in questions asking about the Clark House, wherever my notes went. I had a couple other items. The group was asking about, we can add those as additional questions or to bore down into that. But at least if we can get this out tomorrow, get this back to the group, and at least kind of capture a high-level snapshot of where we're at right at the moment. Obviously, I think, further discussion, I think that probably leads in your next question is where do we go from here?
Right.
Is the committee looking to meet again next Tuesday once we have this information to get into, the write-up and everything else? Because, as you said, September 2nd is looming large and coming quickly.
Can we use the comment section to clarify some of our recommendations?
Please add your comments in if you want to tweak those. I think I said the Ray Hutch version or something on mine, but obviously if people want to tweak it, obviously we're not going to be able to please everybody 100%, but we'll try to at least shoot for the middle of the road, and then the Survey Monkey will make sure we have categories for comments in that as well.
Thank you. Tom?
Just a quick comment, Mark. Since Carrie was here for 80%, 90% of the meeting and has done such a great job, can you let her respond tomorrow?
Oh, yeah, we'll reach out to her. I'm sure we can email it.
Thank you, Tom.
We'll email it off to her tonight. As we leave, we'll get that off to her and get her weigh in on that. Hopefully, it sounds like she's got a better version of the application than we do. I know we're just using the free version, so we'll be in touch with her in the coming days to get that out, and hopefully we can get that out before the end of the week so that people have the weekend to get the survey completed as well.
Okay. What's next for tonight? I'm on dangerous ground because my lovely wife is in Virginia, so I'm good until 8:30 tomorrow morning. So I can be very flexible here and stay as long as you like. But is there a next step is there a next step? Actually, Dr. Putman will join me because he and I are in the same boat. So we'll just roll up our sleeves and make ourselves available. Public servants, right to the end.
No dinner when you come here.
So next steps. So wait, that's exactly right. Turn up the heat. Okay. So what's next for tonight?
Next meeting.
Okay, so next meeting, next Tuesday, is what was tentatively placed on the agenda. Does that work for a majority? And so between now and then, so we're going to get, everybody's going to get this into
Please
Zach and...
drop off your stuff before you leave. And
No names required?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Let's get that in.
Thank you.
And then the staff will give a kind of a snapshot after they've spoken with Carrie of what the totals are for that. They'll do a little bit more detailed survey monkey to get that out. And the goal would be, and we would stress to all of you here and then to those that are not here, to make sure you get that filled out and back, because we'll want those results for next Tuesday. Those members that are not here that might join us for next Tuesday, all of us are going to have to make sure that we don't get ourselves drifting back into meeting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but starting to move forward. And I think that's going to be probably difficult, but I think the challenge for all of us is to help keep moving that piece forward versus the slipping back.
Zach will put this out to the missing members tonight.
We will. We'll get it out. We'll get that out.
Yeah, Kent is on a Brian cruise, so he won't
Yep.
be included.
Okay. Anything else, Doctor?
Tony, just both John Piper and I will be out of town for the next meeting.
Okay.
So I just have a question, I guess, around, we do a lot, obviously, similar, and I sit on a lot of committees, and we talk a lot about consensus. And so the definition I always use is consensus is when you leave the room, not only can you agree with what was said, but you can defend it. And I've sat here quite a lot, and I don't think, and actually Dan said it earlier to Jim, which is you're not going to change anybody's point of view. I think people came in with a point of view when they heard and they listened, but people probably still feel pretty strongly they did on that first day when they came in about what type of use. So to help with next meeting, this survey, I think, is that sort of my understanding is at some point it's not going to be about trying to come up with everybody in agreement, but it's probably going to have to lean on the majority of the committee in some form or fashion. Is that accurate? I guess I'm just checking.
I think that very accurate. Yeah, I mean, I'll do kind of a head nod with the committee, but I think that your point is well taken.
And I think that's, I just know that I won't be here next meeting. If we do meet on that meeting number 9, I'm back in town. I'd be happy to be here. But I do appreciate, from the district point of view, being able to sit through this process, because we do know it has an impact on us one way or the other as a school district. We're able to share some information. I can't take the survey because I can't speak for every one of our residents, but it's been very helpful from the school point of view, and appreciation from me and the school board for letting us sit through this. Thank you.
Great. And thank you as well, Tom. Thank you. Okay. Anything else before we leave? Next Tuesday here, 6 p.m., and we'll get some materials out here over the next 24 hours or less. And as always, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Are you all right?